Today's Daily Fantasy Baseball slate presents us one of the toughest questions we have to answer when playing this game. We have to decide if a pitcher's recent downtick is cause for concern or simply the result of bad luck or variance. And that's tough because we can't walk up to that guy and say, hey, how's your arm feeling? I'd love to do that, and that would be great, but we can't do that. So we have to dig into the data, decide, is this recent downtick legit? Should we actually avoid Zach Gallen in a plus matchup at home, or should we turn elsewhere? Can we trust Zach Gallen for tonight? We're going to dive in, dig into the data, see what it says, and try to get the best answer we can to get you ready for tonight's slate in MLB DFS. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire, here to break down Tuesday's 13-game main slate with locks set for 7:05 p.m. Eastern for today. There are no rain notes on this slate and not a ton of weather overall in general. Just 3 games for today with temperatures above 75 degrees. Those are in St. Louis for the Royals and the Cardinals. They are in Houston for the Twins and the Astros if they allow the roof to be open there. And the roof will be open in Arizona for the Diamondbacks and Rockies. So I'd upgrade offenses in those 3 situations, but keep an eye on the Houston game because they may shut the roof there. And if they do, it would downgrade that game to being on par with the others. But St. Louis should be better for offense. Don't really want to go there personally. And then Arizona, also good for offense, but also not a spot I'm super itchy to get to for tonight. So no massive weather notes on tonight's slate. We'll dig into the Gallen question, outline pitching, talk about stacks and more in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up later on today, our PGA DFS podcast for a very fun field for the Memorial Tournament at Weirfield Village. That'll be coming up here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast via myself and Brandon Gadula. Get that by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts as well. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs because right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. First online real money wager only. $10 deposit required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with the... I'm going to sneeze here. With the Kansas Star Casino LLC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG in Arizona. 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In Connecticut, 1-888-789-7777. Or visit ccpg.org/chat. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. In Wyoming and Kansas, 1-800-522-4700. Or in Kansas, ksgamblinghelp.com. Louisiana is 1-877-770-STOP. In Massachusetts, gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. In Maryland, mdgamblinghelp.org. In New York, 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In West Virginia, go to 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Pitching preview for this Tuesday main slate, Shane McClanahan facing the Cubs. He comes in with the highest salary on FanDuel at $11,200, followed by Joe Ryan at 11 flat. Zach Gallen, the guy we're talking about here, 10-7. Logan Gilbert against the Yankees at 10-6. Bryce Elder at 10-4. Lucas Giolito, $10,000. Kodai Senga at 96. Tony Gonsolin at 94, with Kyle Gibson, Kyle Freeland, Brian Bayo, Yusei Kikuchi, Nestor Cortez, Miles Mikolas, and Brandon Bielak as the others at $8,000 or higher. Now, let's begin things off here with the Gallen discussion because he gets the Rockies in Arizona, and it's a great matchup. And he, in general, is a great pitcher. So let's talk about Gallen and then decide where to put him for tonight because the past 2 starts for Gallen have been pretty rough. Looking at his past couple games, it's been a definite cool off from where he was previously. So when I see that, and I see a big dip in strikeouts, big dip in swinging strike rate over a small sample, what I look to first is velocity. And Gallen's velocity in those 2 games has actually been fine. It's been on his four-seam fastball. It's actually been a little bit higher. And that's a positive, I think, as far as if we're trying to discount things here. He has changed his pitch mix a bit, opting more for his cutter versus his slider. And there aren't huge differences as far as velo on those, but maybe one is better on him than the other. So I think if you're looking for a concern as far as Gallen's data from the past couple of starts, it would be that he has opted to go with the cutter versus the slider, and we don't really know why, given that it has led to a dip in his production. So if you want to be wary of Gallen, I think that's probably going to be your first thing you look to, but the velocity at least is very okay for Gallen. The reason we're bothering to go through this endeavor for Gallen is because the matchup is pretty attractive. The WRC plus of the Rockies is 95. It was much lower before Ryan McMahon went on his power binge over the weekend, but that's definitely boosted things. But they're still not a team that you fear, especially outside of Coors Field. So I'm expecting Gallen to get back to his old ways personally, because the velocity is still okay, because a cutter is still a breaking pitch in a way. I know it's called a cut fastball at times, but it doesn't work like a fastball. So I think we'll see the old Gallen eventually. If we lump in his 2 recent starts, the struggles there, to what he's done overall this year, his skill interactive ERA is 3.34. He has a 28% strikeout rate with a 5% walk rate. If his velocity were down, I would back off for sure, or if the match were tougher. But neither of those are the case here. So I'm okay sticking with Gallen here. He's also back at home tonight, whereas those 2 games are both on the road. So I'll go with Gallen. I understand if you don't want to. I think that's the way I'd phrase it. Personally, I will be going there. I understand if you don't want to. There are pretty good alternatives on this slate, so you can definitely justify. But for me, I haven't seen enough in Gallen's data to decide that I want to jump ship. So for right now, I am okay with Zach Gallen and do want to be on him. The top alternative to Gallen is Shane McClanahan. He does not have an easy matchup, which is why I prefer Gallen. But McClanahan does have a high strikeout one, which is good for upside and great for tournaments. McClanahan's facing the Cubs. They have a 126 WRC plus against lefties so far this year, which means I don't really want to use guys facing the Cubs. They're very good. But they do a 27% strikeout rate against lefties. So good lefties can have a lot of upside against them. That strikeout rate is second highest on the main slate. So McClanahan gets a boost, and his upside was already good. He has 9+ strikeouts in 3 out of 11 starts. He has 7 in 3 others. And the results have been amazing, which is why I think he can handle this Cubs lineup. He has a 1.97 ERA so far. I have McClanahan projected for 7.4 strikeouts, which is the top number on the slate, even accounting for the fact he is on the road, accounting for this matchup, all that stuff. So if you want to go McClanahan over Gallen, I can't push back on that. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it's just personal preference for the venue and for the matchup that pushes me on Gallen over McClanahan for tonight. So I'll go Gallen over McClanahan, but personally, if you want to go McClanahan, I see no reason not to. He is fantastic. High upside matchup. All that stuff makes a lot of sense. As for the value play, we're going to go back to Brian Bayo for his 3rd consecutive start. He's been a value play here, and luckily the salary is still down in the value section. The first 2 times I've been on Bayo have been solid. He's gone 12 combined innings, 3 earned runs, 13 strikeouts. And this time, he's at home against the Reds. Salary is 86. That's definitely good enough to do some work for us for tonight. And I don't think the Reds are bad, but they are a good matchup for a righty. They have a 94 WRC plus. Their ISO is 135, and those are numbers we can live with, especially outside of Cincinnati. Now, Boston is also a pretty offensive-friendly park, but it's 63 degrees in Boston tonight, which means it's going to be a boost for pitching and not as bad of a park factor as it would be in other situations. Bayo has been good beyond just the past 2 starts for been on so far this year. He's been solid across the board. He has a 3.77 skill interactive ERA. His strikeout rate is 24% with a 12% swinging strike rate, and he gets a lot of ground balls, 59% ground ball rate. So you get strikeouts, you get ground balls, you get a low salary, get a good matchup at home. I like a lot of what Bayo's done. And again, I do like Gallen. I do like McClanahan. There's some other guys to like on this slate. I'm fine having Bayo in my player pool. You think he does enough to justify that for $8,600. So if you want to spend down, give yourself flexibility to use the high salaried Dodgers, high salaried Braves. I don't blame it. I don't blame you. So I think Bayo, very good value play for tonight in MLB DFS. So for me, I'm going to go Gallen at the top, but if you want to go McClanahan, no pushback, and Bayo, a worthy value play, deserving of being in your player pool for tonight. Let's dig into the stacks. Did kind of allude to this in the Bayo section, but there are some high salaried batters I'd like to use for tonight. Beginning with the Los Angeles Dodgers facing Jake Irvin. This game is in Los Angeles for tonight, and Irvin's first 5 starts have been a struggle, which I think was to be predicted or expected given how little experience Irvin had above Double-A before making his debut. But really tough spot for tonight, which I think makes the Dodgers a good stack. The Dodgers against righties so far this year, we're almost in June, so this is a large sample, have a 216 ISO. They have a 41% fly ball rate, which is the best mark on the slate, and that makes it a very tough spot for Irvin. He's set up a 43% fly ball rate so far across his first 5 starts. That number was 42% in Double-A last year. The hard hit rate in the majors for Irvin is 40%, and he's also walking too many guys, which means the batted balls are not the only route this stack's hitting. Could walk some guys, could get us access to middle relievers right away. That's also one route to a stack being good. So no stack is guaranteed to hit. That definitely is not a thing. Irvin has had some good starts this year, but I do feel good about this one tonight and feel good about ranking the Dodgers highly for tonight in MLB DFS. As with most stacks, there is going to be a guy who is a value play who you still don't really feel great about including within your stacks. And for the Dodgers, that's David Peralta. He could bat in the middle of the order. I think they'll probably dip him down to 8th or so, which would be great to make it less tempting. But just a 115 ISO against righties so far this year, not a big threat to steal. So if you're looking for like a quote unquote value play in the middle of this or in the lower part of the Dodgers lineup, I much prefer Miguel Vargas. I think he's a bit more likely to swipe the bag. You think he has the same number as Peralta this year, but it makes me feel better about it. But better power numbers against righties, $2,800. So not getting to Peralta personally if I can avoid it. Vargas, the preferred value play here. Despite a good situation for Peralta, I'm probably not going to get there personally. Mention the Braves as well. They're in play facing JP Sears. This game is in Oakland, which is a bad park factor. So I never really want to go here, and Sears is also pretty good himself, but he's a lefty. And then the Braves get to face the A's bullpen. And I think that combination is enough to justify stacking the Braves here. We talked about this last week where I think Sears himself is a fine pitcher. He has a 4.18 skill interactive ERA in his past 11 starts since he started throwing more sliders and fewer changeups. And 4.18 skill interactive ERA is not bad by any means. And he flashed that last week against the Mariners, where Sears allowed just 1 earned run across 5 innings. But if you look at Sears' start so far this year, opposing teams are still averaging 5.5 runs per game against him, not him, but against the Oakland A's in those games because the bullpen is so bad. So even if Sears does do well, the bullpen can still get hit and the stack can still hit. And Sears himself is not unhittable. He has a 53% fly ball rate in that 11 start sample we mentioned. He doesn't have a super restrictive hard hit rate, and the Braves crush lefties. Their ISO against lefties is 281. Like, for context, I believe Mookie Betts' ISO against righties this year is like 222. They're at 281 against lefties as a team. It's absurd. It's a bananas number. I don't care how small the sample is. So there are definitely downsides, but I want to go at the Braves here. I feel good about it. And I think the plus side of the Braves is you can stack them while going to McClanahan and Gallen because of how many mid-range plays they have with juice against lefties. One of those guys is Ozzie Albies. I've talked about this a lot, I think, but he does get a boost against lefties. His ISO this year against lefties, 371. It was 202 last year, 262 the year before that. So you look at the value plays on this Braves team, and pretty much all of them benefit from facing a lefty because Austin Riley's salary is still acceptable at $3,200. You have Marcelo Ozuna, if he plays at 32, Albies 31, Orlando Arcia is 29. You can make a good stack here without breaking the bank pretty easily. So I think the Braves are a fantastic stack for tonight. I think that you can get them regardless where you go at pitcher, and to me, that is pretty attractive. So the Braves and Dodgers, both high salaried stacks I'd like to get to for today. The third stack is going to be the Orioles. I've really enjoyed stacking them so far this year, and I don't think they'll be super popular for tonight. They're facing Cal Quantrill, who's had some good starts, and as a result, this might not be the perfect stack, but I think it is good enough to go at here. Quantrill last year got by and had a pretty good results-based year by suppressing hard contact. He has not maintained that so far this year. His overall hard hit rate is 39%, about league average, and he has been tinkering. He's been using fewer sinkers over his past 5 starts. And in those 5 starts, his hard hit rate creeps up to 41%, which could mean that he'll go back on that. But even if he does, the time before Quantrill made this switch, he wasn't thriving. He was tinkering for a reason. His overall ERA this year is 4.75. His expected ERA is 5.54. So his worst start of the year came last time out. He allowed 6 earned runs in 4 innings to the White Sox. Orioles, pretty good team against righties, a 107 WRC plus, solid temperature in Baltimore for tonight. So I'll be on them here. I feel pretty good about them and do like the Orioles, despite the fact I don't think they'll be super popular for tonight. Now, the one downside is likely no Cedric Mullins. He left yesterday's game with an injury, so I'm expecting him to sit for tonight. And Mullins is great, so that's a bummer to lose a great option. But they may put Adam Frazier in the leadoff spot. He was there against a righty when Mullins sat last week, and Frazier does have 4 steals against righties this year. His ISO is 167. His salary is $2,800. I think I'm higher on him than I thought I'd be. Like, I kind of thought this might be a Peralta situation where I dig in and I'm like, okay, I can't really talk myself into this, but I do think there's enough there for Frazier to justify him at 28, especially if he does flip up to the top of the order if Mullins can't go for tonight. So Adam Frazier, $2,800, not a guy I've used very often historically, but I think for tonight does make sense as a one-off or within an Orioles stack against Cal Quantrill. Things to watch, couple spots here I think that are noteworthy. The White Sox facing Tyler Anderson, and Anderson's peripherals are pretty awful this year, but he is doing a great job of suppressing hard contact. And as a result, it's led to some pretty impressive starts. So I think the White Sox are in play. They have a lot of, they're getting healthier now, so a lot of good righties in this lineup. I don't mind them, but I would not be shocked if I wound up being lower on them than consensus because I respect what Anderson does as far as suppressing hard contact and limiting the upside of opposing stacks. The Brewers are facing Yusei Kikuchi, the hard contact thing, not in play here. He's still giving up a lot of fly balls, a lot of hard contact, and he's facing the Brewers who don't have Willie Adames right now, out with a concussion. They strike out a lot against lefties, even when Adames is healthy, which means that Kikuchi could have a good game here. But someone like William Contreras could be a good one-off in this situation. I really don't mind him. I think that he is a good player in general. So he's kind of like the one fun righty left here within this lineup with no Adames. So more so for one-offs than anything else for the Brewers for tonight. Finally, the Twins are facing Brandon Bielak, and I don't think Bielak is a bad pitcher. I'm not itching to target him, but Royce Lewis is minimum salary, and he had an awesome return from his torn ACL yesterday. He looked really good in his rehab stint where he actually stole a couple bases, 4 home runs down in AAA. So Lewis's salary is the minimum. I think that if you want help getting to McClanahan while stacking the Dodgers and the Braves, I would say put Royce Lewis in as a one-off, and you can feel pretty good about the process in doing so. So Royce Lewis, minimum salary, good one-off for tonight. Let's finish up here with the dinger calls. This one, I don't know if he's actually going to play. It sounds like Max Muncy should be back. He did play last night, partially, but I'm assuming he will actually start tonight's game. So I'm going to make Max Muncy the boring home run call for today. His odds for a Dinger Tuesday over at FanDuel Sportsbook, plus 320. Pretty short for sure, so not a bet recommendation, but as far as a dinger call for today, I think Max Muncy at plus 320 does make a lot of sense. The fun home run call, mentioned before, William Contreras facing off against Yusei Kikuchi. He is in Toronto, which has had pretty good homer skew so far this year. Contreras' odds plus 420. So again, not super long odds by any means, but I think that he's pretty interesting for sure. So the home run calls for today, the boring one, Max Muncy, and the fun one, William Contreras. If Muncy can't go because of that hamstring, which again, I think he will, given he played yesterday, I would go to JD Martinez as the alternative to Max Muncy. That's all we got here for today on the solo shot. I should say Contreras is a catcher. So if he doesn't go, we'll make Royce Lewis the fun dinger call alternative, because why not? Let's have some fun with that. That is actually all we have here for today on the solo shot. As mentioned, coming up later on today, we got our PGA DFS podcast for the Memorial Tournament. Get that by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. We'll break down that one over on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. If you've got any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineup. lineups. So we'll talk to you once again tomorrow to break down Wednesday's slate. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.